welcome back to my channel. I would like to start with saying huge thanks to everyone who viewed my previous videos. The numbers exploded this week and I'm really grateful for that. It keeps me very motivated to record new episodes. In my previous video we learned how to filter data in a table. In this episode we're going to learn about Excel tables, which gives you the same functionality as well as couple more benefits we're going to cover throughout the video. Let's jump right in and create a table. To do that, let me first do a couple of cleanup operations to my data. First of all, I want to get rid of the filters. I could go to data and untick filter, or I can press Ctrl+Shift+L to achieve exactly the same effect. Now, just for demonstration purposes, I want to clear formatting from the headers. So if I go to Home and then under the Eraser tool, I can clear formats. Now we have our data to play with to create a table. The easiest way to do it is to click anywhere within your data and go to Home, Format as Table, and choose one of the styles. Let's maybe pick the blue medium one. Excel will then ask you to confirm what range is it, as it automatically detected rows 3 to 33. And it will also give you an option to say whether your data has headers or it doesn't have headers. If you untick this option, Excel will create headers which you can then manually change. If you leave it as it is now, Excel will convert your range as a table. Let me quickly undo it and show you other ways to create a table. If I press Ctrl+Z and then I could go to Insert and press Table. That's exactly the same effect, or I can simply press Ctrl+T on my keyboard, and as you can see the same pop-up appears allowing me to specify my criteria. If I click OK to that, we're getting the same table. The very first thing I would encourage you to do when you create a table is to give it a name. If I click anywhere within the table, I get an extra tab here specific to the table design. If I click on that, I can change the name, and my naming convention would be something like that. You can choose whatever you want, bearing in mind that there cannot be spaces. You can use underscore, dashes and so on, however spaces are not allowed. Now let's see what other functions the table offers. I'm gonna leave those three for the moment and focus on inserting a slicer. If I click on that, Excel will give me an option to insert the slicer for each column I have in my table. I'm going to select all four of them, however you don't have to do it, I just want to demonstrate the purpose. Click OK to that. I get 4 different slicers. Let's maybe distribute them a little so we can play with them and then explain what they do. Now slicers are effectively filters, however they offer a great interaction and are amazing user interface items. Let me show you why. If I wanted to select the city, if you remember from the previous episode, I would have to click on the arrow, untick everything and then go to a specific city. With the slicer I can just click within Berlin and Excel does the job for me. As you can see, the filter has been applied, however it only took me one click instead of going through a couple of steps. What is also important is that they are connected. See, when I selected Berlin, it only offers me performance bike as a product. The reason for that is that we didn't sell any hybrid mountain or road bikes in Berlin, so I'm not able to select those values. See, if I do that, the list is blank. If I come back to performance bike, that's what we get. I can clear the filters from each of the slicer to get back to my original shape of the data. For the moment I'm going to delete the slicers, we're going to come back to them later on, and I'm going to explain a lot more about slicers once we get to our pivot table video series. With 4 slicers selected, I'm going to press delete to get rid of them. Once again, coming back to the table and under design, our next section offers a functionality to link it to SharePoint list. This is a little bit outside the scope of this video, however it's good to know that you could actually connect your list to a SharePoint list, and there's a lot of material online on how to do it and then what to do with the other options that become available once you do that. The next section offers very powerful formatting tools, so let's go one by one and see what they do. The very first one will hide a header if I untick it. To bring it back, I of course have to tick it back. I could also make sure that the first column stands out. Ticking it will make the first column bold. I could get rid of the filter buttons. I could add a total row, which is going to sum any column that has numbers in. We're going to talk a little bit more about it in a minute. I could highlight the last column by ticking this box. I could tick or untick banded rows, and what that does, it's highlighting or not highlighting alternating rows in a different color. And I could do exactly the same with the columns. We could have both of them applied, however on the data that small it doesn't really look very good, so I would say in this case we would leave banded rows as a default option. The total row we added offers a little bit more than just summarizing the data. Let me just untick it and tick it again. As a default, as I mentioned, it's just going to give you a total in first column and then summarize any column that contains numbers. I can change this from sum to any of the function it offers, or even build more complicated function myself. Let's say that for the quantity I just want an average. 5.3, if I select everything here, you can see this is indeed showing the average quantity. Let's say that for the product, on the other hand, I just want to count how many items there are. I could simply change that to count. Even the total here, I could say minimum, and that is going to give me the minimum date within this column. So there's all sorts of things you can play with. For the moment, let's get rid of the total row just to make it a little bit easier to read, and move on to the next section. This last section offers you a choice of different styles you can apply to your table. So if I choose this one, for example, as you can see, it's going to format the table exactly as in the preview. You can choose from any of the style depending on your preference or whatever data you're playing with to match the rest of the spreadsheet. However, it's worth noting that if you do have some styles for your company, you could create your own style. This is a really long process, however, so I'm not going to do it here, just to show you what kind of things you can format. You can add borders, you can add fill, you can change the font, so there's many things you could potentially change from how the table is styled. I believe by now it's obvious why tables are a good choice when it comes to formatting and styling. However, let's see from the operational side why they offer even more value. Now let's imagine that I wanted to add two columns to my table, one of them being a price of a bicycle and the second one total sales, which would be the price times the quantity. For the price, if I click in column F3 and start typing price, if I hit enter, as you can see, Excel is automatically going to extend my table to include this row. It's worth noting that it will happen on the right side. However, if I add something here, as you can see, it does not work. We would have to resize it differently, which I'll come to later on in this video. So let's create the second column being total sales. For the price, I'm going to make it very easy. I will say 1000 for each bicycle. If I once again click on that and double click, Excel will fill down the formula. For the sales, however, I'm going to say equals to quantity times the price. And if I hit enter now, you will notice that it automatically fills the entire column. So you don't have to do it one by one, or you don't have to drag it down. Excel will automatically know that this is what you're trying to achieve. Now let's pause for a moment to look at the formula it created. If I click on cell G4, as you can see, it's giving me this kind of weird formula. I mean, normally wouldn't we expect E4 times F4? Secondly, should it not be changing? As you can see, formula in each cell is exactly the same. Now what happened here is called structured reference, and this is probably the best feature of table from the operational point of view. Now if I wanted to refer to my table from here, if I start typing equals to and then try to select the entire column, as you can see, it has its own name. I could achieve similar effect by if I start typing TBL, and as you can see, table cells becomes an option. Let's see a little bit more in depth how does it work. Throughout my videos you probably heard me talking a lot about absolute references. So let's say that I wanted to add an extra column here that would calculate the tax from the total sale. If I just call this column tax, I could say that it equals to G4 times, let's say, 20%. Now this formula works fine. If I drag it down, it is going to work okay. However, if I drag it to the side, as you will see, it doesn't work because based on the absolute references, the cells have now shifted and it's looking at the age column. Now let's do the same within the table. I'm going to start by adding a tax column to the table. Going to start exactly the same by pressing equals to, and if I click on cell G4, what Excel does, it's saying add total sales. Now this add means that we're only looking at this row. We don't want the sum of the entire column. We only want values from this row, and total sales shows from which column. If I now finish the formula with 20% times 20%, as you can see, we very easily calculate the entire column. To show you why this is important, let me first drag this formula down to match the size. See, let's say this is the table for this month. We are absolutely okay here. However, let's simulate that next month there are a couple more products added. I'm just going to copy that and paste underneath. See, if I do that within a table, the numbers automatically update and they do the calculation. Here, I have to drag the formula down. If I don't remember that refreshing my file, I'm in big trouble. Now remember all the aggregation formulas. Let's take a look at SUMIF, for example. If I wanted to create SUMIF, I no longer need to worry about the absolute references. I can just say, let's say, a city, and then add the criteria of Budapest, and the sum range, once again, let's say total sales. And as you can see here, I don't have to press F4 because this column will always be the same column. If there's new data added to the table, it will be automatically captured within my SUMIF formula. Now let me come back to the tools section of the design view I promised to cover later on in the video. If you look at the convert to range, what it does, it simply reverses the entire process. So we created a table at the beginning. If I click convert to range, that's going to change the table into a range again. Now, one scenario why you might potentially be doing that is because there are some rules and limitations related to the structured references I mentioned earlier on. For example, if I wanted to call this column January 2019, and then the column next to that again, January 2019, Excel will not let me do that. It will automatically add 2 at the end because we cannot have same column names for 2 columns. If I insist that this is what actually needs to happen, I can change the entire table to range. So I please yes to that. And as you can see now, I can say January 2019. However, I lost all the functionality, including the design button. Now, as usually in my videos, let's try to apply this knowledge in the real world. I'm going to open a website and I'm going to go to landregistry.data.gov.uk, which basically gives me sale price of houses in UK. From there, I'm going to go to price paid data and then again price paid data. If I scroll down a little bit, I can grab a current month as CSV file. I'm not going to click on it, I'm going to right click on that and say copy link. If I now go back to Excel and maybe let's open a new document to keep it all clear, and then go to data, get data from other sources, and then from web, Excel will allow me to paste the link to the file. Okay. Click OK to that. Excel will fetch the data from the website. Before I load this data, I want to transform it a little, so I click on transform data and let's do a little bit of cleanup. I don't have column headers, but I can work out what they mean. So let's first get rid of the ones I don't need. I'm going to click on column 1, then holding Control, I'm going to click on column 4, 5, 6, 7. I think we also are not going to need column 8. Column 9, we definitely don't need 10 and 11, and I think we're only going to leave 12 and 13. So everything after that, once again, I'm holding Control button, we can get rid of. Now I'm going to call this one a price or sum. This is how much someone paid for the house. This one a date, and this one city. Last one I believe is a county. If I click close and load, Power Query, it's nicely going to bring it into my table. You can see that Excel is doing something by checking that section. And so a little bit later I can see that over 100,000 rows have been loaded. Now with this amount of rows it would be difficult to go one by one, and applying any operations, simple things such as filter, are amazing. Now what you might notice is that this data came as a table by default, so I get all the design options for this as well. I promised to cover the last element, so let's do it with this big chunk of data. Now we're going to summarize data with the pivot table, and I promise there is a big episode, if not series of episodes, about pivot table coming, as this is probably the most important analytical tool in Excel. However, just for now, to give you kind of a teaser of what's about to happen. After pressing summarize with pivot table, Excel will confirm the range you want your pivot table to be built on. In our case, this is a table which is called automatically by the name of the file we linked it to online. You can see this in a grayed out area right now here. Now we want to paste this pivot table into a new worksheet, but you could do it in an existing one and then choose where you want to paste it. Just to keep it clear, I'm going to say new worksheet. You can ignore add this to the data module for now. Now I'm going to close this section to make it a little bit more transparent. And then without going into detail, I'm just going to drag a city into rows table and then the sum into values. Now, as you can see, Excel will effectively do a sum if formula for me. However, I have a lot more options. I could, for example, remove the city and drag in the county, and the idea would be absolutely the same. I could also change the sum into something else, for example average, and just like that I have all this data available within a couple of. What's more important, however, is that I could create combinations, so effectively some ifs formulas or average ifs and so on, combining all the data. This is, however, a big topic, so just kind of giving you a hint of what's about to happen in the future episodes. That's all I planned for this episode, and once again I wanted to say huge thanks to everyone who watched my video. If you want to stay up to date and be notified whenever I post a new episode, the one coming now will be about index and match, so kind of a enhanced VLOOKUP formula. Please click subscribe and the bell button. Every subscription helps me stay motivated to create more episodes. Thank you very much and see you in the next episode.